Tricky situations. We've all been in one at some point. Sometimes you have to stay cool and go along with whatever is thrown your way. But in some cases, you feel like you have no choice but to think fast and avoid the uncomfortable predicament altogether. Well, that is exactly what happened nearly a decade ago, according to a certain Reddit post that has become a famous internet tale over the years. I'm Hoosier Daddy, and today we're talking about the story of the infamous window steak. Now listen, most of us have had that employer that we wanted to be on our best behavior in front of, especially when you're new to that job and want to make a good first impression. But every once in a while, there is that instance where trying to maintain a good appearance can go horribly wrong. Well, that is exactly what happened in today's story. It all started on August 27th, 2015, when Reddit user DefenestrateMeNow posted on the Tfue subreddit, or Today I F'd Up. The title of the post was, Today I F'd Up by throwing my steak out a window. That title alone is already gripping enough. It makes one wonder what happened as a result of this. Did it hit someone as it flew out the window? Or did it attract a bunch of vermin somehow? So let's follow along with the story, shall we? Last night, my wife's boss from her brand new job invited us over for dinner. On the drive over, my wife reiterated many times to me just how important it was to make a good first impression. I scoffed and arrogantly informed my silly wife that I always make good impressions. My wife's boss is a single lady in her 50s, so it was just the three of us. We chit-chatted over drinks and salads, and seemed to really be hitting it off. She laughed at my well-timed, perfectly appropriate jokes, and my wife seemed pleased. Okay, I know this is more of a dinner party setting, but these jokes he refers to, I'm pretty sure are the same ones I heard at college parties back at that time. They weren't jokes at all. Were they wild house parties with drinking and drugs, just like in the movies? No. It was someone playing dubstep or something from an iPod speaker while three frat guys, usually in salmon shorts, were stood in a circle drinking and saying, "Hey Peter," like Joe from Family Guy. Anyway, soon she brought out the main course, a nice big juicy steak for each of us. As I began to cut into my steak, I was discouraged to discover how undercooked the steak was.
It's raw!
Now I've had my fair share of rare steak. I prefer medium, but I can handle rare. This was several minutes on a hot grill short of rare. I probably could have resuscitated the cow if I tried. Instead, I sat there fidgeting with my knife and fork, worrying about how I was going to get away with not eating the steak. Blame veganism? No, I'd already feigned great enthusiasm upon seeing the steak. Just then, our hostess excused herself to the kitchen to take care of some dessert preparations. As I looked across the fancy dining room table at the open window on this third-story apartment, a cartoon light bulb appeared over my head. I knew I had to be decisive, realizing that she could return at any moment. I committed. I grabbed the steak with my hand, gently shook off the juice, and executed a perfect throw right through the center of the open window. Here's the big-time FU. The window wasn't open. It was the cleanest freaking window you've ever seen in your life. That is, until my mostly raw slab of steak slammed up against it and slowly slid down, leaving it. That is, until my mostly raw slab of steak slammed up against it and slowly slid down, leaving a trail of bloody juice in its wake. My wife, whose steak was a nice medium rare, and was unaware of my predicament, turned and jaw-dropped, and stared at me like I was an alien from another planet. This look then slowly morphed into more of a, there is no place on this planet you can ever hide from me expression of demonic anger. My wife's boss heard the thud of the steak on window impact, and came quickly. She took in the scene, the steak sitting on the windowsill, the blood trail, my empty plate, and then gave me an uninquisitive, puzzled look. I just didn't know what to say. It felt like a minute of silence, but was probably like 3 or 4 seconds. Finally, the best I could manage was, I'm sorry. I'm such a klutz. I don't know. I was just cutting it and it slipped. Just ask my wife. I'm really a klutz. Right, honey? I will clean this up. I can't believe this. I'm so sorry. Both women continued to stare at me like I had escaped from the loony bin. As I smeared the blood around the window with my cloth napkin, dusted off the steak, and continued to mutter my incoherent explanation, I knew no one was buying the story. I knew what I had to do. I sheepishly returned to my seat and proceeded to eat every bite of that disgusting, cold, chewy, bloody, raw steak. I remained pretty quiet the rest of the evening. My wife's only 2 words to me since the incident are, "I'm fine." Naturally, a lot of the commenters on the original post started asking the same questions, and they were usually, why? Some even gave their input on what he should have done instead. One question, OP. Say the window was open and the steak is gone. She returns a minute later. What, you just tell her you devoured it? You should have grilled the steak under the pretense that you were killing off any germs it might have picked up from the floor. This has to be an episode of Seinfeld. The legend of the window steak has gone down as a classic tale on Reddit. And while the identity of the person has never actually been revealed, that's not really all that important to this story. Luckily, 2 years after the original post on December 12, 2017, a post was made by the wife of the OG poster explaining her side of the situation. My husband told this Tifu from his perspective a couple years ago, and it was a popular post. Someone suggested I should tell it from my perspective. Hope our discomfort brings a little joy to you fine Redditors. This actually took place a couple years ago. I had just gotten a brand new job that I was really excited about. So I was delighted when my boss, who I had tried to establish a rapport with, invited me and my husband over to her home for dinner. Well, mostly delighted. My husband is, well, he's the sweetest, but he has a history of doing really dumb shit. Because of this, I was worried about him coming along. By the time the day of the dinner arrived, I had become so anxious about it that I had actually floated the idea by my boss that I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it. She was clearly taken aback and responded, "Oh no, I really hope he can. I have a dinner for 3 ready to go." Upon seeing her dismay, I assured her that I was sure he would be able to find a way there. Well, we made it over to her apartment on time, and things actually started out really well. It was actually just the 3 of us, which surprised me somewhat, but made me a little less concerned about my husband, as crowds really tend to bring out his unpredictability. I had just started to finally relax, and was a couple bites into a deliciously cooked steak when things took a horrible turn. My boss had just stepped into the kitchen to check on dessert, and then I noticed something odd out of the corner of my eye. It was one of those things where you know something strange has happened in your peripheral, but you're not sure what. You have to look over and focus your gaze to really comprehend it. I look over at my husband and see him holding his steak in his hand, hovering it just an inch or 2 above his plate. Before I had a chance to fully comprehend what I was seeing and verbalize something that might have saved us all from the coming horror, he threw his steak, baseball style, across the room straight into the dining room window. It hit the window, making a loud noise, and slowly slid down. Now my husband does dumb shit, I already told you that. But he's not a crazy person. Usually when he does dumb shit, I at least understand what he's thinking. There's usually some semblance or rhyme or reason to the dumb shit. In this case, I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't wrap my head around what was going on. I stared at him with what must have been the most confused look and watched as he stared back at me. An expression of utter horror painted across his face. I couldn't make any sense of what was happening, but I also didn't have time to try. I heard the footsteps of my boss, coming to see what the sound was. It suddenly sunk in that it didn't matter why he did what he did. He did it, and we were all about to come face to face with a very awkward situation. I could feel the anger flush through my face. For a brief moment, I contemplated trying to help my husband get out of this. But no. This was his dumb shit bed, and he could lie in it. Not like there was any possible recovery anyway. My boss walks in and sees the steak lying on the windowsill. There's the longest, most awkward pause where we all just sit there frozen. My boss and I stared at my husband forcing the ball into his court, as the cringe just hangs in the air like ocean fog. He finally manages to mother some incoherent garbage about being a klutz and even tries to get me to back him up. I leave his ass out to dry in the deafening silence. He makes a poor attempt at cleaning the window and retrieves his steak. Mercifully, my boss asks me a question about work, and we both did eagerly have a conversation. We all resume the rest of the evening pretending that he isn't there. A sort of unspoken agreement by all that this is the only way to move forward. As soon as we got to the car, my husband turned into a nervous chatterbox trying to explain himself. Turns out the dumb didn't like the way his steak was cooked. And get this, he thought the window was open. My husband, ladies and gentlemen, tried to chuck his steak out a 3-story window. He thought that was a reasonable solution to being served an undercooked steak. A year or so later, my boss hosted a Christmas party for the company at her newly built home. My best friend Jenny was my +1. The comments on this post were a lot harsher than the comments on the original post from the husband. I just can't understand why he thought it would be a logical response. Calling him an idiot would be offensive to idiots. If this was r/relationships, we'd be telling you to divorce. This is absolutely true. Have you ever been on r/relationships? Divorce or breaking up is pretty much their only go-to for any situation, no matter how minor. My husband accidentally brought home Ritz crackers instead of Townhouse. Divorce! Improperly cooked steak can be disappointing, especially at restaurants. I prefer medium rare myself, but if it's a little under, I'm not terribly bothered. What I don't like is when I order medium rare and then they bring me a leather boot. But normally it's fine to just tell the person that it's overcooked or undercooked, and I'm sure they're more than fine with fixing it. I mean, this kind of thing happens all the time. So the lesson here is, if your steak is not cooked to your liking, just let the person know. It's better to just have someone throw it on for another minute rather than having a juicy slab of beef slide down a window. Thank you everyone for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Hoosier Daddy, and I will see you next time.